Welcome. Today I'm going to be interviewing Ashely Shaw, who is one of 5 candidates vying for 3 positions on the Plymouth School Committee. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're going to dig right into the questions.
Sure.
Okay. The $119 million budget that was passed at town meeting will fund the department at the current level. It does not include pay raises that are being negotiated with school unions, and more will be requested in the fall. How do you determine your budget priorities given the mandates that you have no control over, the undetermined pay raises, and the state funding, which has yet to be determined?
I think those are all the things that really make the school budget specifically really difficult, is a lot of unknowns. Obviously, we have no choice but to fund the mandates that aren't funded by the state, so those are obviously the top priority because there's not really a way around those. So that's the top priority, and then obviously my stance is that retaining and attracting quality staff is only going to make our position better in Plymouth. And when we're more desirable, have a more desirable school district, we'll attract more commercials, businesses, will attract more families, will attract more people to our town. So hopefully that would end up balancing out the cost to have a pay raise for the teachers. And then I would also say that it's difficult to forecast something with the state. I think the state, that's one of my biggest things, is that I think that we need to do more work with the state, more work with our state reps, more work with those people to get more funding for our schools. Transportation is a big thing that we don't get enough funding for from the state because we're not a regional school district. So that's something that I would look forward to working with our representation at the State House to try to move forward, is at least getting us something back for that transportation, since we cover more square miles than than most regional school districts.
Yeah, in the biggest town in the state all by itself.
Right.
Yeah, and how many schools are you actually responsible for?
So there's 8 elementary schools, there's 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools.
10
so
schools.
Yeah,
12.
12
That's
12
a lot of schools.
Yeah, it is a lot of schools. So, and I know that our elementary schools are aging a bit. I think we're looking at some repairs or replacements at some point in the near future. When I say the near future, I mean like the next 10, 15 years, not, next year. But I think that that's something that we need to think about, and potentially condensing the amount of elementary schools that we have, I think would be a good way to condense or to save our staff members, like our specialty support people, occupational therapists, physical therapists, the people that work with our special education students. Having those people travel to 8 separate elementary schools is very difficult.
Right.
So if we could condense those elementary schools, I think it would also provide more inclusion opportunities for our special education students.
Now, the school system itself offers a huge amount of different areas for students to be able to go into. Is there any cuts that you see coming down the pike because of the fact that so much is offered?
I don't think so, because with our technical programs, we would need to offer those opportunities to students regardless. So like we do still have a very small number of students that we have being transported to other districts. So like the agricultural programs is mostly what we usually send students out of our district for. So if we didn't have those programs, we would still need to provide opportunity for things like the tech studies programs to our students. And I just can't ever support cutting the arts. So I think we know that it's always the first to go is the arts. So I can't see anything that would be easy to cut in our programming. Obviously, if we have to make hard decisions, we have to make hard decisions. But I would hope that we would look at cutting. I know that we're already looking at cutting unfilled positions and things like that instead of laying off actual staff members. So hopefully we could look and be more creative about those kinds of things rather than cutting full programs.
Yeah. But the school budget itself is obviously a huge part of the town's budget. And to your point, it's very difficult to decide what are you going to cut.
Right.
And not knowing what the state is going to actually be giving you this year, and you might not know that till the fall.
Right.
must make your jobs on school committee incredibly difficult.
It does. I was on the advisory and finance committee on the town side for like 6.5 years, I think it was. So any budget projection is difficult, especially, so I think that our school system does a good job of trying to project that budget, but we are facing extraordinary costs across the board, both the school and the town. Right. But it's just, something has to give somewhere, and I think it has to come from higher up than the local level at some point. We need to look to the state or the federal government to help us fund these things in an economy where the prices are skyrocketing for everyone.
Yeah, true. Okay. Question number 2. What is your philosophy on special education, and what do you think it means for students to be supported in the least restrictive environment?
Oh, I love that question. So special education students, my philosophy is that inclusion is always the best option. Inclusion can look different for every student, excuse me, depending on their support needs. But I think being included is important for every student. So I would like to see an elementary program where we house our specialty programs or our sub-separate programs for our special education students in only like 2 or 3 of our schools. And I think that I would like to see that expand to more of our schools, or like I said, to condense our schools so it's easier to keep those kids in their community schools. Community is a really important thing, especially where Plymouth is so large. If we have kids that are coming from like the Cold Spring district and being districted to South Plymouth because that's the school that can accommodate their needs in the least restrictive environment, I think that we need to look at trying to expand those programs into our other schools. Like I said before, it is difficult because we have specialty staff that works within those programs. So it's easier, obviously, to keep those staff in certain buildings, but I think that lends us to almost like place students in those programs that may not be the best place for them, but that's because we have the most help and the most support in those programs. But I do think that's obviously it's a big hurdle to try to get the specialty staff to be in every building. I know that we do have some that splits their time in buildings, and but I think that my dream for our special education students would be to always be considered. So when we're planning school events, when the PTAs are planning events, when we're planning field trips, like when we're planning after school activities and things like that, I would like us to look more into how can we include our special education students in these programs, and how can we make them be successful in building a community around them with their same-aged peers that may be more typical than they are.
Now, the amount of students that are on IEPs, for example, has increased dramatically in the last few years. There's a lot of students that are now considered users of special education that never were before. Why do you think that has happened? And is that a good thing, or are the systems doing something wrong that is causing this to happen?
So I think it is a good thing. I think that we're seeing this growth in those numbers because we're getting better at identifying these things in kids, and in kids that may not present them in a way that we think they should be. So I know that especially with autism, it shows up differently in girls and boys. So in the past, it was thought of as, only boys had autism. And now we're learning that girls also are autistic, but they are showing it to us in a different way, or it's easier for them to find ways to hide it. So I think that we're doing a better job at identifying who needs help and to bring them in and get them that help. I know that in my generation, I'm a millennial, but in my generation specifically, I think that was kind of our growth, was that we started out, a lot of us girls didn't know or didn't get diagnosed with things like ADHD until we were grown adults.
Right.
And I think that's what we're seeing, is that we're becoming better at identifying these different earlier and more accurately looking at what those labels actually are and what they include, and adapting that and knowing more about that. And I think it's a good thing that we're seeing more of this, and that we're able to provide support to students in a way that will help them succeed.
And yet special ed does cost. There's a cost associated with it. Just to your point of transporting kids, if something's not available in one school, you have to transport them to another school, correct?
Right, correct.
So it's it's a larger expense than it was ever before because
Right.
there's more students using it than before.
Right, and that is one of the unfunded mandates. In my opinion, it's a big ask. But when the federal government put IDEA into law, it should have been fully funded. Is the thing. So. I think we need to look more, like I said before, to the state and federal government. Obviously, that's a big fight. It's not something that we're going to do, in a year. But I think it's something that we need to start looking at because we're doing our students a disservice. And there are school districts that are not as well off as Plymouth is that are doing less for their students. And we need to look at a way to level that out and find equity in education for everyone.
Okay. Question 3. There's often two very different sides to subject matters that can come before the school board or the school committee. How do you navigate your personal opinions in regards to complex issues?
I've tried very hard in my adult life to practice what I call civil discourse. It's a way to go back and forth with people where you're not seeing eye to eye, but explaining your point in a way that doesn't belittle or diminish the other person. I think that the minute that you start to insult someone else or to go on the offense with someone, that immediately makes them defensive. So I think that you're losing a lot of what you could gain when you are not engaging in civil discourse with people. I existed on a committee of 15 people for 6.5 years, and I wouldn't have been able to do that successfully if I couldn't deal with people that had differing opinions than I do.
And that was the FinCom.
Yes, that was the FinCom.
That's a large committee.
It is,
15
yeah.
people.
15 people is a large committee, so obviously we're all not going to agree on everything all the time, and we're all going to be of different differing ideas. So I think that I'm pretty good at listening to the other side of things and engaging with those people to have them also hear my side of things instead of always being a battle.
Right. And in this position on the school committee where there's 7 different people that are on the committee, there's a huge amount of knowledge that has to go with that job.
Yes.
Financial knowledge, laws. Talk about that.
So there is a lot. Like I said, I was on the finance committee for 6.5 years. I also am a paralegal. So I do have a certain understanding of those complex matters, and reading contracts and stuff is not something that everyone can do easily. So I like that kind of stuff. So those things intrigue me. I think there is a misunderstanding in the general public of what the laws mean and what things can do. So I would love to see a way to bridge that gap and communicate and provide a little more transparency in what's going on and why it's happening the way that it is. I think the why is what a lot of people look for, and it's not given a lot of the time, and I'm not sure why. Again, the why.
Yeah, why isn't the why given? Yeah.
Right, but I think that once people know the why, they become a little more understanding. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to explain those complex issues in a way that's more palatable to the public.
Okay, great. The 4th question I have for you is, what are the Plymouth Public Schools' greatest strengths, and what areas definitely need improvement?
I think our greatest strengths are our students. Our students, our diversity, and I think that's what makes up whether it's economic diversity. So I think that Plymouth is very interesting in the fact that we have a lot of different demographics in our town. So I think that one of our strengths is providing the opportunity to those demographics to come together and understand each other, but we're doing that through the students. So I would say that our students are our biggest strength, and our teachers. Our teachers are incredible. What they do day in and day out is not something that I could ever do. I did at one point want to be a teacher, but I went the paralegal route instead. But it's incredible what they do, and they are not doing it for glamour or for pay. So I think that it's just a testament to our district how strong our students and our staff are.
What about how the school is managed? How the schools are managed?
The schools are managed. It's a complex issue. So like I said before, we do have older buildings. On the town side, we see this too, where the maintenance of those buildings goes to the wayside, whether that's funding or it's hard to fund everything all the time. So a lot of the things fall to the wayside. So I think our facilities could use some updating. In our schools, that is one of our weaknesses. And I've said before, I presented from the Special Education Parent Advisory Council to the school board, and I said that I think our school district is fine, but I think we could be excellent. So I think that we're doing okay, and we're meeting expectations. I think that we could do a little more for our students and staff and families to bring us up to the next level.
Do you know how Plymouth rates statewide on testing and the usual things that rate a school district?
I don't, because I don't love the usual things that rate a school district, and I think that Plymouth is a very difficult school district to rate because of our size, because of our range in demographics. We have a high percentage of English language learner students, so obviously we have to get them to access the language or obviously provide them translated tests, but it's hard to gauge the knowledge in those students specifically. Standardized testing is not my favorite thing. It's obviously it's something that we have to deal with right now, but standardized testing is not standard. It's made for a certain group of kids that can get through those types of tests and have it accurately show what they know. But I think there's a large group of students that those tests aren't accurate. And when you have a school district as large as Plymouth is, I think it's hard to accurately gauge that through standardized testing and the things that go into the rankings.
Now, the students that graduate from Plymouth, do you know how many go into college versus how many go into the trades or directly out to the workforce?
I don't know the number off the top of my head. I do know I am on the strategic planning committee for the schools. We did just go over, I have the number somewhere. Okay. I just don't have it in my brain right now. But we do have a high percentage of students that do go on to college. And I do believe it's a smaller number of students that go into the trades, but with our technical studies program, we do have a lot of students that go that route as well.
You have a lot of pathways.
Yeah, we see a lot of students following. I think the smallest pathway that we see students following is military, but we have a lot of other students going in a lot of other directions. So I would like to see it expand more into the technical studies. I think that we're losing sight of the trades sometimes.
And the price of college is just
the price of college is astronomical. I have a freshman in college at Salem State, so I know that and that's a state school. So,
but those aren't a bargain anymore.
Yeah, they're not what they used to be. But I think that exploring more pathways for students post high school is a great thing in other opportunities.
And overall, A plus down to F minus, what would you give the district as a rating right now?
I would give us a C plus.
Okay. Okay. Average?
A little above average. Yeah.
A little work to do.
Not quite the B minus. I almost did the B minus, so we're maybe up there towards the B minus, but I'm going to give us a C plus.
Okay, excellent. Okay, Ashely, thank you. So now we're going to have you take 2 minutes to speak to your constituents, people that are going to be voting, and tell them why they should be voting for you. So look right into that camera and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ashely Shaw, and I would love to have your vote on the 18th. I am a mom in Plymouth. I am a graduate of the Plymouth Public School System. Both of my daughter graduated from the Plymouth Public Schools. My son is currently in kindergarten at Nathaniel Morton and receiving special education services. I think that I would bring a lot to the board because I had 6.5 years on the Advisory and Finance Committee, so I know the financial side of things. I also have my children and my experience in the town. And I think that our teachers are the best things that we have in our district. So I would love to find other ways to support them and look to the future in Plymouth Public Schools. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We wish you the best luck in this entire election season and in your campaign. And please do make your choices heard by voting on or before May 18th in the Plymouth town elections. Thank you and good day.